out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Why, hello, Tim.
Oh, hello, Ryan.
And hello, everyone listening. Thank you for being here to Dismembering Horror, episode 139 of Dismembering Horror, the podcast show where myself, Ryan McDuffie, and
myself, Tim Aslin,
we dismember a horror film every week. We talked about what worked for us, what did not work for us, and anything else we found interesting or noteworthy.
All 7 of our listeners just shut it off. It's true, though.
You mean our listenership just tripled?
Right.
Instantly. What more do I say on that, Tim? It's everything I just said.
I don't know, but I think our listenership, if they're anything like me, they're pissed off that we watched this movie.
Well, if they're anything like me, they're so glad they saw this film.
I had a feeling you would feel that way.
So what do we do, Tim? We meet in the middle and hope we draw one and all.
We'll see.
All right. Well, what is this movie? Today's film from 1964 is Brazilian's first horror film. At midnight, I'll take your soul. Which, Tim, I mean, you got to at least admit it's a pretty great title.
Yeah. I'll admit that.
What worked? The title. That's it. For
it.
Tim.
No, there are things that worked, but I don't know. There are things that didn't work.
Great.
What a shock.
Well, hey, then anything else on you want to say what our show is or any other business to attend to before we watch the trailer?
No. What?
Right.
I mean, what kind of business would I even have? It's none of my business. I'm just sitting over here feeling like I got run over.
I mean, when I say business, I mean, it's great to hear from you, but I meant more of the show. Okay.
Nope.
Great.
Nope.
Then we'll just continue on with the show with the trailer.
You don't want to hear about my life?
You said you didn't have anything.
I don't. I'm a slug. I've become a slug. We've hit slug, the slug portion of pandemic life.
Well, I'm a banana slug. That was my mascot for UC Santa Cruz. So you're in good company.
Oh, man. We had a banana slug incident when I was a kid once. It was crazy.
I had a slug incident, too. What was yours?
We were in... we went to a park, like one of the state parks. And it was like a vacation thing. So it was the only day we could do this. But it was pouring rain. We were like the only people in this park. This is my family. I was like, however old you are in 4th grade. And when we got back to the car, the entire parking lot was completely full of banana slugs. So there was nowhere we could go. Wait, we couldn't pull out of the parking lot without running over banana slugs, which is totally like not cool. But we were trapped. Like there was nothing we could do. And it wasn't like they're going to like get out of the way. They're slugs. So we had to like gingerly try to pull out of there and not run over as many as possible. It was so messed up.
There's a horror film, I don't know if you've seen it, that was fun, called Slugs.
I don't think I have.
Mine's not a story. I was just a kid and I stepped on a slug in grass as a kid and screamed and ran away because it was...
That sounds about right.
Because it was gross and but equally like guilt-inducing and scary to have crushed something.
Oh man, what a bummer!
I still still gives me chills.
Those slugs just trying to live their life.
And with that, a perfect transition into our trailer.
Yeah, exactly.
For At Midnight, I'll Take Your Soul. All right, Tim, reasons I thought you would like this movie.
Okay.
Independent, homemade effects and spirit.
Sure.
Total commitment to the macabre. Themes of devilry. Questions of, is supernatural real or not? Those sorts of implications. Totally zany, unpredictable. I mean, we'll go on, but this Coffin Joe character is quite the character.
Yeah.
But I thought you'd have a blast with his turns for the worst. Let's put it that way.
Sort of. I get where you're coming from, but
like
I will say, remember you. I think you felt kind of the same way about what the hell is it? Jesus Christ. The Crispin Glover movie with the rats.
Crispin. Oh, I think you said Kristen. Willard.
Yeah. So I feel actually very similar about this as I do about the character as I do about Willard. So we'll get into
where they're a very fascinating mix of our protagonist yet also the film's antagonist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which I think can be cool but also is a very difficult thing to get right.
I think this film, I mean, my first instinct was that it's kind of like another film that's I don't know if this is one of my favorites. I'm just I'll get my rating out of the way. I mean, I'm tempted to see the rest and have the Coffin Joe box set, of course, but I'll give it a very hearty rent it. I'll go with there's a coffin-shaped box set like available in the South America region. But no, I'll give it a rent it.
Okay.
And
okay.
Well, yeah, anyway. Well, but you don't give it that.
I don't think so. I think I'm just a stream.
Okay.
I'm just a stream. A meandering stream. Coming down from the mountain to the
Tim,
town.
hello.
What?
Tim.
Hello. Oh,
and why do you give it a stream in summary?
Kind of, I mean, honestly, like kind of what you spoke to about what you thought I would like. That's those things are all, I agree, working, except for him. And not that he's not good, but it's in a way, we talked about it with Night of the Demon. I, again, have a really hard time. If I despise the like main person, I just get kind of mad. And it's like makes it not as fun of an experience for me. Because I want to like, if he had a counterpoint like that was throughout the film, I think I'd be okay, but that doesn't exist. So
they keep getting killed off. His counterpoint
exactly, yeah.
It's everyone else is his counterpoint.
Right. And it just kind of makes me, he's just a jerk, man.
That's what's so great about it, though.
But I don't like jerks.
I don't either. But it's like a movie. It's funny. I don't know.
Is it?
This is also like, this is what I was going on to say before, was it's completely different films, but like a film that I love through and through. Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Oh man, I haven't seen that in like probably 25 years. So
right. The Russ Meyer movie, it's Roger Ebert's sole screenwriting credit.
That's right. Yeah.
It's has kind of the moniker of being the best film ever made and the worst film ever made.
Right.
And this feels like one of those to me. It's the greatest movie and also just the worst movie. And I think all the things that make would make one say are the greatest aspects of it are all I really care about. And then anything are the worst things, just give it its charm and uniqueness. So there you go.
Yeah.
And it's just, I'm just fascinated with this, not just the character, but like the actor who basically was the filmmaker who just stepped forward because he had to make it on the budget, and how he became like as big as Freddy Krueger in Brazil. Like he's like Brazil's horror icon. Like he's
really?
huge there. Yeah. And just that's fascinating to me about how, he clearly struck a chord there. And then hearing about like I said, the super independent spirit it was made.
Mm-hmm.
and that it is like a bad lieutenant or something where it's
mm-hmm.
just watching this horrible person. It's like, and I was just fascinated with how he wavers like between being just a jerk to a murderer to like, hey, yeah, let's come over for a beer. Like it's so, or hey, how's it going? You know,
well, he's psychotic. So
yeah,
you know.
That's what I loved about him then, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Well, should we try to summarize?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And here, let me start us off with the summary, Tim.
Cool.
Because I feel like to set the stage, I just want to repeat how the film opens. And then you take it from there with what actually happens. So the opening, we kind of have two intros. But this just sets the stage so well for what the opening is. It's Coffin Joe, or the character's name, Zé do Kai. Oh, we aren't going to be able to say any of these names. A million apologies. Zé.
Kai Joe, I think, is something.
Kai
sort
Joe.
of something like that. Because or an X. Let's see, Oaxaca. So the X is an H. Kaiho or Kahio. Something like that.
Opens with our character, Coffin Joe, looking into camera. We're zooming in on him as he gives us this monologue. It says, "What is life? It's the beginning of death. What is death? It is the end of life. What is existence? It is the continuity of blood. What is blood? It is the reason to exist." And then we're off into our opening credits. And then we have another intro from our witch character warning us to not watch the film.
That's
because at midnight, she'll take our soul.
I love it. She gives the warning, and then she goes, "Oh, too late. You're already watching it."
Yep. But that opening, I think, from Coffin Joe just totally sets the stage of like what this film is in its essence, where it's like doing the most typical hokey, like, what? That doesn't make sense, but it does. And it's also great, but it's horrible. What?
It's bullshit. I think that's my kind of takeaway is like, I've met dudes like this. They're just full of shit. And so like everything's like, oh, like I'm trying to sound smart and philosophical and have like some sort of like deeper understanding of the universe. They're just pulling shit out of their butt.
Yeah, but that's what it all is anyways.
Right.
So like
Yeah.
that's even if it's someone more thoughtful, but it can still strike a chord or have something that's to read into once it's in the movie and has the wrappings of a movie.
When it comes from a psychopath, I think it is more it's more bullshitty to me because
me,
I'm like you're just a psychopath. You're just trying to get a rise out of people.
But that's when it's more inimitable, I think.
What is that? Wait, say that again. What is that
inimitable? Word? Like you can't imitate it.
Oh,
like how would one even come up with this?
I swear to God, I went to college with this guy. I swear. That's why it's striking a chord. He sucked. Anyway, okay, so there you go. We've set the stage, but so Joe Joe is a what would you call him? He's like a mortician, I guess.
Yeah, he's an undertaker.
Undertaker, that's right. That's a perfect word. And so he's such a dick. He kind of just like floats up to funerals and is like, okay, everything, yeah, we're all good. Cool. Ugh, these guys with their moaning and crying, so boring. But he's the town undertaker. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He's very like, I don't care about anything.
A chip on his, yeah, to say the least.
He's got a nihilistic chip on his shoulder.
I love the Wikipedia description of Coffin Joe.
Oh, wait, is it good?
An immoral undertaker with Nietzschean beliefs.
Nietzschean beliefs.
He is driven by his desire to have a son by, quote, the perfect woman, believing that immortality is achieved through procreation, a concept he refers to as, quote, the continuation of blood.
Ugh. This is why I don't like it, because that sentiment just is like barf to me. but whatever.
It's a horror movie. He's a horrible. It's a bad guy.
I know. Well, it still makes me hate him.
I mean, yeah, but
like I hate Freddy Krueger too.
Yeah,
he's at least it's actually there is an overlap there in these characters. Anyway, okay, so what's the movie? The movie is him just being a complete piece of shit. And like anybody who gets in his way or like gets in the way of him getting this idea of like procreating the perfect, he wants a son because his bloodline is everything. Anybody who gets in his way, he either just beats the shit out of or just straight up murders and like slinks away without like getting caught. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, if in the summary here is all about painting a picture of what sort of this movie looks like, what sort of the happenings are. Really what happens, which is so funny, is he does exactly as you said, but rather than like in another horror movie where it's like, beats the person, kills them, and gets away, usually have an extensive aftermath where he casually just sort of covers it up and everyone cowers to confront him about what he just did. It's funny. There's always this like, it's not just like a one and done kind of thing. There's always his kind of denouement of his evil doings.
Yeah. I mean, he's so like just one trajectory where it's like I think I'm with this one girl, but I think this other girl is hot. How do I get with her? Well, I got to get this person out of the way. They're in my way. My girlfriend's in the way. Kill her. Okay, now I need to get the girl I like, but her fiance's in the way. Kill him.
His big first whole adventure is just, I need to eat meat on a Friday, on Holy Friday. Right. So it's like he goes out of his way and everything, and just to make that his big mission of the first third of the movie or whatever it is.
Yep. And then, and then so on and so forth. Like he horribly rapes the woman that he likes, whose fiance he's killed. And she then kills herself in response so that he won't get his way. And then he starts killing people to keep from getting caught. So it is a little bit like, there is a shift in that he's just trying to survive. And ultimately the gypsy's curse comes back around. And we get a little bit of like a Telltale Heart style sort of Poe feeling, third act sequence, finale sequence. That's pretty fun. And ultimately I don't know. We can discuss what our takes on what his ultimate demise is, but he ends up dead.
Or does he?
The end. Or does he? That's right.
And I also just the other kind of through line is he's constantly, I mean, we kind of mentioned it briefly, but his other whole modus operandi here is denouncing any beliefs in God, the supernatural. Emotions is a big one.
He is a psychopath.
Yeah. So
true psychopath, right?
Yeah.
Takes pride in telling people who have a set of beliefs that their beliefs are dumb and bullshit. Because I was thinking about this the other day. I was trying to relate the type of people who just on a low level they're just kind of jerks that want to get a rise out of people, and compare it to the same mechanics that exist in a serial killer, like somebody who truly is disconnected to the point of killing people and thinking that that's just fine. And I came up with the idea that I think the common thread is that they're so lacking in empathy that their whole motivation is to feel pleasure. And on a spectrum of what gives them pleasure is sort of where they land in the severity of their psychopathy. So on the low end of the spectrum, they just get pleasure out of making people uncomfortable, saying crude things, making a weird joke, standing too close, whatever. Relatively harmless, but super annoying. all the way up to literally killing people because it gives them, it's arousal. Pleasure is actually not the right word. It's arousing to them. And I was like, holy shit, there's this huge spectrum. And we've met people like that. I'm not saying everybody who's like that is a psychopath per se, but there is this spectrum that kind of makes more sense to me, because sometimes I meet these people where I'm like, what's their problem, man? Like, why can't you just not be a jerk all the time? So this guy, I think, falls into the the further end of that spectrum. But it is that same thing. He just wants to mess with people.
Wow, I feel so seen. Great. Should we move on to our first section here?
Yeah, but you possess empathy, Ryan. So that's good.
I like to think so. Great.
Unless it's all just an act.
What else are we doing here, Tim?
That's right.
What we're doing is we're moving on to our first section. What worked?
What worked? What worked for you? What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked? What worked for you?
Well, like what you're saying to, I mean, this, to laugh at what you're just saying of that, taking pleasure in like others' quote unquote weakness and emotions and all that. I mean, it's just that I think that is that maybe the Nietzschean dichotomy that they're talking about in this, but the strength versus weakness ideals that he puts forth of like when he. Yeah, when it seems like he's buddies with that one guy where it's like, hey, you want to go have a drink, Coffin Joe? Yeah, come on over.
Is that guy's Antonio, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it seems like Antonio's his only bud, his actual only friend out there.
Right. But then he starts beating him and then kills him in the bathtub. Right. And then sort of like all along that way, he's saying, I'm strong, you're weak. How is your faith going to save you now? So I don't know exactly what I'm saying, but there's this interesting stuff going in there as far as and that's always fun to observe, is people's obsession with like physical weakness and strength and emotions as a perceived weakness.
Kind of what you're hitting on. What I was thinking about that I think is similar is this sort of idea of like the paradox of norms, right? There are these norms, and he, regardless of whether or not he believes in the norms, he is at the mercy of them. And so like a norm being like power, the power dynamic of just being a human being, and like the norms that different cultures have decided how they frame what represents power, whether it's like masculinity represents power, or like, I don't know, what's another good balance, like feminine, masculine balance represents power, like whatever the thing is. But in this culture, it seems like the main norm is the power of faith and belief. And he is like butting up against that, but it's still the same. It's a paradox for him, because he's essentially saying, well, I don't believe in that, but I do prescribe to power being something that I can inflict or hold over somebody else, which is the same thing, right? So it's like the great irony of his bullshit. So I think that's really interesting, because he's, in a way, he's a bully, right? That's just kind of a basic like just reality for him is, and like typically, as we know in life, bullies tend to be coming from a place of deep insecurity. Like that's what they're motivated by, is hiding where they feel like they're lacking in themselves.
And in the case of our hero here, Joe, it's interesting. I don't think this is actually in the movie, but his backstory is he is like scarred from World War II and came home to find his wife cheating on him or whatever. And yeah, that's his backstory.
Man, if that's not in this movie, right? Because I didn't catch that. Okay, so I think that singular fact would have catapulted this for me. If we had gotten like, I don't know, maybe some little flashbacks or something. Obviously they were constrained because it's such a small indie like endeavor, but man, that makes so much more sense.
And then to bring it back to like extremes and different dichotomies and stuff at play here. It was the Wikipedia description. It said Nietzschean beliefs, which I'm sure there's a lot to that, but I just think of there's the how do you say it? Dionysian versus Apollonian traits. So like the chaos versus order, basically. And I think it's, I don't know. I think there's a lot of horror in here, knowing that, and I mean, maybe I'm stereotyping here too with like Brazilian culture, but the sense that I get is, they're overall very like fun-loving, have parties, that kind of outgoing people. So that just, I don't know, that just connects with the whole those two extremes, the chaos and the pursuit of pleasure versus the order, the predetermined. All that, I don't know, it makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. And I think what's cool about it is that, it seems like my impression, similar to what you're saying, is that Brazilians have found a bit of harmony as a culture with those things. And that's great.
And it makes sense then that Coffin Joe strikes a chord as just being someone who's the ultimate hedonist, I guess, is a way to put it. And I think there is a horror in how he calls people, I don't know, not because there's, of course, I think it's valid, these rituals and beliefs people have, but because it's not like in the physical world, there's a horror in there when he calls people out for it. Like, okay, let me just give an example. Like when he forces the guy, threatens the guy into eating the turkey leg or whatever on the Holy Friday. It's like we see nothing. He doesn't get sick instantly. Like he's not instantly smited or anything. So there's this, I don't know, it's this. So, but it's still like we know it's wrong though. At the same time, it's not respecting his beliefs or boundaries or whatever.
Well, and I think there is a lot in that, because it really is what we're talking about is like it's such an abusive way to try and teach a lesson, right? Like telling somebody that their beliefs are like putting somebody into this scenario where it's almost like life and death, and I'm going to prove to you that your beliefs are just nonsense, mysticism, whatever. You can believe that, like that people can believe what they want to believe, but like forcing it onto somebody and like humiliating them in that realm it's not cool. Like what does anybody gain from that version of teaching somebody that lesson? Nothing. It just makes it worse. And I think we see that all the time globally for all of history, right? Instead of being like, okay, well, I have a different opinion, and just like being cool with living your life from a different set of rules than somebody who lives them from a different one, barring that nobody's actually like their rules are, killing other people. But like, we should be able to just be like, yeah, it's cool. Like we can all kind of have our own rules, but humans they don't do that. They're like, my rules are right, your rules are wrong, and I'm going to like, I'm going to put my boot on your neck to let you know. And that's really what Joe is. Like, he's that thing of like, it's not enough to just be an atheist or even just be a hedonist or whatever. He has to like put that on other people, which is ironic because that's the thing most people complain about. Like an atheist will complain about religious people pushing their ideals onto other people, right? And so it's like we're all just doing the same. Well, but like in this case, it's the same two sides of the same coin. right? Neither are good.
What did you love about the poker game scene?
I mean, I just think it's hilarious, and like it's sort of the most, to me, it's kind of the most, like, I don't know if I would call it realistic, but it feels like the one that could actually really happen to me, and that like was the most almost visceral to me, where it's like he's just a maniac, right? Like, and he's lording this attitude over everybody. Like, he comes into that bar and like the whole bar just sort of stops, and it's like you can feel everybody go, oh shit, here we go.
Very Mr. Hyde, speaking of deities and pleasures.
Oh man, totally. And so he comes in and he interrupts the poker game. He like inserts himself into it. He like runs everybody up, makes this guy who he knows this guy doesn't have any money, but he pushes him in to like put all his money on the table, and then he like doubles down on that just to make him feel bad. And then when the guy loses, of course, he's like doesn't want to part with the money. He just stabs him in the fingers. He just takes a broken bottle and just, and I think that one moment, like that particular one, felt like I was like this. I've been in this room before,
where someone smashes someone else's fingers with a bottle.
Dude, yes. When I'm bartending, I've seen stuff like that.
He chopped off his fingers though. You know?
Yeah, no. Yeah. In my case, I saw a guy pick up a broken bottle. This is so stupid. Two dudes, two bros, drunk bros in the bar on like, you know, a Wednesday night or something. And one bro is talking to somebody over his shoulder and bumps into bro number two, who drops his beer bottle on the ground and it breaks. And they enter into this like, and they start like yelling at each other. And the guy who had bumped into the dude in the first place was like trying to apologize. He was like, man, take it easy. Like, why are you being such a jerk? Like, I didn't mean to knock your beer out of your hand. And the other guy's like, you know, fuck you. Yeah, bro. Like, and reaches down, picks up the beer bottle and starts swinging it at the dude, the broken bottle, and starts like stabbing at him. And the dude, the first dude, is putting his hands up defensively and getting the palms of his hands stabbed by the bottle over nothing.
Dude,
it was insanity. I was behind the bar, like flipping out. I was like screaming for the bouncer. I was like, I'm like, what the fuck? No, and just side note, our bouncer is like the greatest bouncer of all time. In one move, he swiped the broken bottle out of the guy's hand and grabbed him by the throat and threw him out the front door. In one move. It was like the sweeping move. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. But that stuff happens for no reason, and like, well, no good reason. Just because somebody gets their feathers ruffled, or in this case, because somebody wants to just make the other person feel small.
Mm-hmm.
And like, those people exist, man. They exist. They're out there.
It happens early in the movie too, which is so great. It's kind of the first visceral act of violence we get, and it's intense. Just like it looks, it's grainy, gooey, black and white. Yeah. It just, they get chopped off. But then, I mean, this is probably the best example of what I was saying I loved up front, of just like how rather than, which, I mean, it's great too, you know, how Mr. Hyde, after doing such a thing, would just kind of cackle and run away. You know, Joe sticks around here. He plays it cool and then just kind of immediately almost denies it or says it was an accident, says, go call a doctor. Doctor shows up. He says, oh yeah, I had an accident, whatever. Then just still hangs out at the bar with them, you know, and starts, for further antagonizing them other ways. And then as soon as someone tries to confront him, he starts whipping him.
Yeah.
He fights him back and starts whipping him into submission.
It is like his whole character is just the worst, man. He gets away with everything. People just keep bowing down to his like shittiness, which is good, because ultimately you need that so that like when he gets his just desserts, it feels more appropriate and cathartic or whatever. But But man, this poor town, they're just at the mercy of this guy.
They are. Indeed. Everyone knows him. Everyone keeps an eye out.
You just wish somebody would show up and just knock his teeth out and be like, enough.
Right.
But like that thing, because I think we all have that impulse to some degree of like when we feel powerless or at the mercy of power, especially like power in the hands of like not cool people, we want to take that back, and like we feel so helpless because we are operating under the constraint of like, you know, it's not okay to punch somebody in the mouth.
Well, and that's what makes kind of, you know, you could say House That Jack Built, another example of just sort of horrible psychopath getting their comeuppance at the end, where there's this fun and this desire where, yeah, exactly like you just said, when it's a case where we don't have like a literal person being able to fight back, we just hope for some sort of cosmic justice. Yeah. And within a horror film, you know, something maybe supernatural striking back, some sort of fate bestowing our anti-hero here.
Yeah.
And we definitely get it here, where it's like, and it's that whole end sequence after kind of just this weird movie of just kind of like dawdling along. He's just going around being an asshole to people. We have this, I mean, which I still think was great. We have the ending where we get that exact him getting his comeuppance, but it's so much fun because it gives us just enough little tenets to hold on to of like, when you see a black cat cross your path, it will be the devil, you know, and basically laying out what's going to happen leading up to at midnight when your soul will get taken. Right. And it all plays out. And just to jump ahead to the ending, Tim, because that was just all great. We have his epic one-take monologue. It's basically shouting at the gods, where he's like, you know, test me. Where are you now? Da, da, da. All that. It's so epic. It's in a graveyard. It's great. I love it.
Well, I like that, you know, the real premise in a way is like, look, you don't have to prescribe to the like hardcore dogma of whatever culture you're in, but don't shit on it. Because that, like, once you start doing that, there is such a thing as like cosmic whatever, like retribution. And I think that's a really cool concept where I think this is just true in life. It's like, it will come back and get you. Like, and nobody really gets away with stuff forever.
And that can be often represented in nature, let's say, as if, you know, nature is just, well, nature. It's a force. It's the force that will push back and be a part of whatever is karmically pushing back. Yeah. Just whether that's, you know, the cat in the form of the devil, but just a shout out to so much fun, the like puppet owl that flies at his face.
Yeah, I laughed pretty hard when I saw that.
You just gotta love it, you know? Yeah. And then, come on, when the dead do show up, it's like...
That effect, like, what a genius thing, like, within your restraints of budget.
Are you talking about...
post-aura?
Okay, that one. Wait. Are you talking about the group of them where it's like the reverse image?
The first guy who shows up when he's about to light his pipe with the candle, and he's got this like aura around him. It's like, I don't know, sparkles kind of around him. But
I'm going to tell you what that is in things of note, Tim.
Oh, great. It's such a cool effect for the time because it's obviously a post-processing effect. It's not in camera. And it's just, it comes, I mean, I was like, whoa, what the, like, wow, we made a big leap, but a necessary one for the moment.
But then, I mean, I loved that. And then what's also I loved is then it gets into what I mentioned, where it's the whole group, the procession of the dead, where it's like the black and white reversal. imagery of them walking out, but then also an added like glow outside of them or something. It looked like it was great.
Yeah, I don't know how they did that, but yeah, it looked cool.
And then all culminating in and then we got some very vampire-esque stuff of him seeing himself in the coffin being carried. Mm-hmm. That's always fun. But then their big culmination where it's like he's lying presumed dead in the context of this film with his eyes bulging out. It's hanging upside down with his head back.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
I really love the moment before when he opens both of his, victims' coffins that are laying next to each other, and each one of them has their own thing going on. Like Antonio has a spider, like a tarantula type spider on his face, and he's kind of like almost looks like his mouth has been kind of eaten away. And then Teresina has just like maggots like crawling all over her face, and like I feel like they just put maggots on her face in real life. Like it's pretty intense.
Early CG, of course, right?
Yeah, right. But I love that moment where he really is. He's again, it's that telltale heart kind of feeling where it's like he's seen the horrors of his crimes and like being haunted by it, and I that stuff's cool.
Yeah, great. Well, anything more on the ending, or just can I jump to
some?
Yeah.
I think it poses the question as to what do you think was the actual cause of his demise in that moment. And what I mean is, did he die of his own guilt? Did he die of his own fear? Did like Satan actually show up and steal his soul? Like what's your take on that ending of like what did you feel like you were left with when you see him upside down kind of hanging there dead?
It's funny,
eyeball bulging.
I'm not even thinking in those terms when I'm watching a movie of like trying to figure out what happened. I just like,
well, I guess what I'm saying is not insofar as trying to figure it out, but like what were you just sort of left with? Like what was the feeling you were left with?
That was so cool. Look at his eyes.
Yeah, like my instinct was that the horror of all of like seeing all of this is what ultimately killed him. Like his eyes couldn't take seeing the truth,
right?
And like popped out of his head.
I always will say, of course, though, I want to default to whatever the coolest, explanation is, and I think that's the coolest because it both assumes he did see something and assumes that a physical reaction could be that strong.
Yeah, I know. I love that. It's kind of like in The Lighthouse, like he's seeing the truth, whatever it is, in the light, and it's so horrifying that he, dies from it.
And you could remember all those like
vibe.
The Ripley's Believe It or Not show, all those people who could like pop out their eyes.
Yeah. I did think of that too. That's
funny. It's like, I buy it. Great. Well, I asked if anything other than the end because I still just wanted to shout out some of the other kills and moments throughout too.
I like all the kills.
Well, what's so funny too, like he ends up killing his wife through a poisonous spider. Is that how it plays out? He's torturing her with the spider, and it's like, why, if he's going to kill her, why bother to do it this way?
Well,
but that's who he is.
Yeah, I mean, he's devious in this way.
Yeah.
Right? Like he's planned this out enough to like for us to know like, oh, it's not just like off the cuff. He's like, okay, I'm going to chloroform her first, knock her out, tie her up, put a thing over her mouth so she can't scream, and then have a spider bite her and kill her so that when the coroner comes by and has to do an autopsy, I have an alibi. I had nothing to do with it. Like, it's so devious.
Right.
And I think most of the kills have that element to them.
Well, yes, absolutely. I just want to say what tickles me about it and just like the feel of how it's playing out as a movie is it's like that's a big deal where, you know, it's his wife he's doing this to. But in the course of the movie, it just kind of feels like it's just almost like his day-to-day life.
Yeah.
You know, he's just going about, oh yeah, kills his wife 1 minute. All right. Goes there, then kills this other guy. You know what I mean?
The horror of how casual he is about it.
Yeah.
He's just skipping through life.
Yeah.
He's just cape of flow behind him, you know.
And here's the horror for me, and why I said maybe I feel so seen is because like that sort of, you know, approach of presence and following your whim and your instincts and whatnot does feel like what I aspire to and is a healthy approach.
Sure.
And I couple with, I feel like my instinct and energy is to like always be challenging people somehow and like testing boundaries and pushing what's sort of the reality of the norm and questioning that. But because I don't want to like hurt people or whatever, it's like it's this weird back and forth of feeling like I'm not fully being myself, but it's respecting others, and it's, I don't know, and that's why I relate to these misfits, as you know, as horrible as they go, I still on some deep level like they just strike a chord with me.
Yeah.
So
well, but you like, you know, that is the difference. You have enough empathy to know that like you are also participating in society.
Yes, but at what cost, Tim, is what it feels like. Of course not. I don't want to go around being like this guy, but it just...
At what cost? There is no cost. You just live your life.
But it feels like I'm not.
Well, that's on you, bro.
Yeah. Great.
Just don't sneak into my place and like murder me on a whim.
Here's maybe a fun, acceptable example of what I'd want to do. I was thinking yesterday of like, oh, what kind of, you know, next house would I want to live in, whatever. And I imagined, what if I like, this is so silly, but this is what I was thinking about last night, thinking how fun would this be if like I had a house where it was like the entranceway was like a long front yard with like a path winding up that you had to go through. But like no matter what the circumstance, every time someone came over, they'd have to get through me vaulting water balloons at them.
Okay. Yeah, you're I don't know how to describe what that is.
It's just,
you just want to have some fun.
No, it's my inner bully, or as I think maybe a little more acceptable way is like I'm a little brother at heart, you know.
Sure.
Anyway,
I think that's fair.
Coffin Joe.
You can do it, but the cost is that some people might be like, I'm just not going to go over to Ryan's house.
Which, you know,
but
might be okay with.
That's right, because the people who will want to participate in that will start showing up more.
Can you see? Oh man, I was so tickled by that thought. Anyway, it's trying to connect it all, and I do say that within the context of just a greater what worked, as I was already saying.
Yeah, I mean, what else?
We got his signature long fingernails he uses to poke out the doctor's eyes.
That effect is pretty good too. It looked good.
It not only did it looked good, but there's something pitch perfect about the guy's performance where he gives this moment of like a kind of like stunned, like half look around.
Yeah.
That just sells it so well. It just makes it feel so real somehow. Like he like tries to look for a second. It's just so sad and horrifying.
Yeah. You know, Antonio's death is pretty solid.
And then he sets him on fire. Sorry.
I know.
After
right?
gouging his eyes out.
Well, he's got to make it look like an accident.
He sets him on fire. It's like as if gouging out his eyes wasn't enough. He's still alive, and he sets him on fire. So I just love it. Yes, and then Antonio, as you said.
Yeah. Just I like that one because it's whereas like he's pretty successful with killing his wife without any real issue, right? Like he handles that one fine. Antonio feels more like he's a little bit over his head like in over his head. Like he hits him with the thing first and thinks that's it. What is it, like a fire poker? And he kind of is like, oh, that's it. Now let me set the stage for him to have fallen into the bathtub or whatever so I can get away. But then Antonio's not dead. Like the inherent sort of like, oh, I'm now in trouble a little, like I have to solve a new problem. That to me is some of the most fun stuff in any movie where it's like really any circumstance where it's like, I have a plan. I'm executing the plan. Seems like the plan's going fine. Oh shit, the plan's fucked. Like now I got to just think on my toes and deal with the new problem. And I love watching those moments unfold.
Yeah, especially when it's a character like his who he's equally kind of where he'll take the time to think and how to execute something properly, but then also, just like you said, is really fun to watch improvise because he's such a planner. It makes it people like that, they're especially fun to then have to sort of watch deal with something impromptu.
Yeah. It's great because it's it's like a good way to use the concept of reversals in your writing. Yeah. Where it's like, oh, I got it. Uh-oh, I don't got it. Better solve this new problem. Okay, I got it under control. Just kidding. Now it's not under control. Oh no, what do I do? Oh, okay, this is other solution. That's working. Just kidding. Not working. Got to think of a new thing. Like I love those moments. They're so fun.
Great. I feel like I kind of made it down my list here. Do you have anything else you really want to say that did work for you?
Really, just the last bit before he runs into the witch gypsy. He's that weird interaction he has with the woman from out of town, where she's sort of like representing him, but like the non-dark side of him. It's like she philosophically agrees with the sentiment that he's sort of posing of like, the Day of the Dead stuff is all kind of silly and like the religious fervor stuff is all kind of silly. He's sort of expressing this nihilistic view of the world. And she's like, I agree. Yeah, I agree. And then like the witch, whatever shows up. I don't want to just use gypsy in a disparaging way, but it's in the Wikipedia. She sort of shows up and it was like, don't think that you can get away with this just because you've met somebody that has like a similar outlook. Like you guys aren't similar. This is going to happen. You're screwed. And there's something really nice to me about inserting that moment of him thinking, oh, I'm like, kind of like you said, he's like, oh, I'm being seen. Like maybe the world isn't all that bad. Maybe I'm not all that bad. Just kidding, you are.
Right. And then she's the one where he goes, oh, I could, he says, I better not mess this up, or I better play my cards right with her, or something like that.
Right. She invites him in.
Yeah.
And he says no. And we're like, oh, okay.
Right.
This is new. Like, do I want him to like actually turn over a new leaf and succeed? No, but like it creates that moment of like, oh, wait a minute. This is a different feeling. Like maybe there's hope for him. Maybe he's not all bad.
A truly unpredictable, as we said up front, I've been saying. Yeah.
So I think that was just a really smart sort of final kind of pushing the setup one last time to have the finale that much more impactful.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not bad. We can talk about the things that didn't work, but
well, Tim, I got the perfect section for you, which you can do that. Do you want to? Really? You want to hear what it's called?
Sure.
All right, here we go into our next section. What did not work?
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
I've touched on it. There's something, it's like I said, it's always hard for me to get on board when the guy's just that big of a jerk. Because I'm just like, I don't like, there's enough of these people in the world that like we have to put up with. Like, I just don't like, I guess what I'm saying is watching this type of person get their comeuppance it's no longer from a storytelling point of view, like cathartic to me. I think it's a kind of a matter of just feeling, burnt out in a world where we're surrounded or we're inundated by people who have sort of similar, shittiness to them, that me personally right now am just burnt out on it. And so I'm like, I don't even want to watch this. And I had to fight that feeling throughout and try to like appreciate the other elements of the film in spite of that like kind of baseline begrudging feeling that I got right away. I mean, right from the top. And so it was just kind of a battle for me. It made it hard. And I think also when it's hard, or it can be hard when you're dealing with subtitles as well, and just sort of I just was feeling tired. Maybe it's because I also got my second dose of the vaccine and was tired. But either way, I struggled through this one from a kind of just like a baseline point of view.
It sounds like a lot of it, you're like, maybe it's just how I felt when watching it. Because now what I always want to do, I don't know, just to always try to find the lesson therein when something's working or not. So maybe it is just all that. But just for examples, like, let's say what made you like love and want to say a buy it to? We didn't review it, but we both recommended, already mentioned The House That Jack Built. So what makes that character in that film work for you versus this one? I know outwardly they're extremely different movies, but I'm just going to pick some examples here just to help you hone maybe some of your feelings.
That's interesting. My instinct is to say that there's an element to Jack of, oh man. What is it? I don't sympathize with Jack, but I think Jack has this level of personal shame and like understanding that he's fighting this thing inside of him. And I think that element is really important in getting this type of character to translate. Because I never felt that way about Coffin Joe. He just is like one level constant rah. Whereas Jack, I feel like there's this question mark of like at all times of, wait, is he gonna actually like see that what he's doing is wrong? Maybe that's in the performance. I think it's more just sort of in the depiction of the scenarios where you kind of are like, you're constantly being pulled around. And I think that movie is really good at showing the confusion or the ambiguity of the victim's point of view, where they're going through that thing of like, wait, what is going on with you? And that having that helps a lot. Whereas in this movie, we don't get it really. We don't get the other characters' kind of like actual point of view. They're just at the mercy of him. And we never get to really like feel like we're getting in with them. So I don't know. I mean, it's a fine line for sure. I mean, I despise Jack, but I almost like sympathize with him. It's weird.
I'm here on the Letterboxd page for Bad Lieutenant from 1992, directed by Abel Ferreira, which I loved seeing when I saw it in film school.
I haven't seen it in 20 years, probably.
Well,
anyway, so.
I was just going to say, it says watched by Tim Aslin. So
yeah. I watched it.
So it's on Amazon Prime if you want to revisit it. But I guess that's not a good example. I can't ask you about
I think
that
I
one.
probably watched that in the early 2000s when I went on my like nutso Netflix, like get every movie, watch as many as I could every day.
All right. Well, what's another one? I don't know any that come to mind that you can think of just other horrible people protagonists that you do like.
I mean, a TV show, Mad Men, like Don Draper he's just such a jerk, but we get these little glimmers of why. Actually, do we get that in Jack as well? Like his history, we get these sort of...
We see a first instance of where he cuts the foot off of a duck, which is like the first act of violence he committed.
Okay. Do we get a sense of sort of like his... Like, was he a victim himself as a kid?
No, it's very much just like, I am a sociopath, psychopath, and here's my journey.
Okay. Well, the thing with Don Draper, I think that helps, he does terrible things, but he carries this, he actually has empathy, I think. He carries around guilt. And that makes him tragic is that we watch him know that what he's doing is wrong, come up against the moment of deciding whether or not he's going to go through with it, have remorse because he's feeling that way, and then go through with it anyway. And that is so tragic because we're essentially constantly rooting for him to choose the right path, and he can't do it. So if we had Coffin Joe having just a little bit of a conscience throughout where he's like has that inner conflict, I think that's what we're missing in order for me to kind of get on board with him. But I don't think that that's necessarily appropriate for the intent of this movie. So it really is just kind of a taste issue.
Yeah, because I agree. I mean, it's like what you said earlier, where you got excited once I told you he has this backstory.
Absolutely.
But I'm like, no, I don't want... There's something just off-putting and creepy about he's just this horrible person, and we don't get even that glimmer. Like, it's not that kind of movie for me, and I don't want that.
Well, and I always do. Like, I want to get inside the psychology and the why of characters.
Just something to make it click as the horror movie it's trying to be. It's just, I don't know. Like, why... I don't know. Why would he want that?
Because that's who I am. Deep down inside.
Well,
I just want to know why.
But that's
I want to understand.
But that's the horror movie where you can't answer that.
Well, I don't know. I think the horror that I like the most poses the question and lets you have to make some decisions about what the possible answers are. And this one I don't think is really posing the question. They're telling you the answer. Like, he's this guy.
Yeah.
And it's like straight line, straight path, boom. Very, very simple story, right? Just morality sort of tale and getting his comeuppance for it.
See, I would watch a whole movie of just like Texas Chainsaw from Leatherface's point of view, and it's just, but with no explanation, with backstory, no like,
sure,
no remorse, no anything.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, were you annoyed by the Rob Zombie take on Halloween, where we kind of got a little more into the why of Michael Myers?
Yes.
Did that bother you, or were you okay with it?
I think it was just his take on it. He has such a style to his films that it just sort of was like, I didn't care one which way or the other. It wasn't like canon Michael Myers for me in a way. I was just I just fascinated with his what makes him in his filmmaking of just the extremity in his characters. Like, so I guess, sorry, I'm just kind of going on, but no, I didn't really care one way or the other.
Okay. That's cool. I mean, I don't know, outside of that sort of undertone issue for me, everything else just sort of falls into like it's forgivable because of the time and the, it's an indie and nothing I think was not working. It just is like, it's not like you're going to get mad about like, I don't know, the edits or the like the film quality or something. Like, who cares?
See, that stuff I wouldn't just, it's not only that I wouldn't put it in what didn't work, but I'd almost want to go as far as putting it in what did work for me.
Yeah.
You know?
I do. I know what you mean. I mean, I spoke with our friends who watched Jaws essentially for the first time. Like, neither one of them had seen it. And they both were like, yeah, it's got some problems. Like, there's some. And I was like, you guys are insane. You're insane. I was like, what are the problems? They're like, well, I don't know. I mean, some of the acting's not so great. And like, there's some really bad ADR. And I was like, that's your takeaway from watching Jaws? Jaws, the greatest film of all time for the first time. Like, that's your takeaway? You didn't like a couple of the edits? Like, what is happening?
Right.
I was so confused by them. But they were like, no. They were like, we like the movie. We just, if we're going to criticize, it wasn't like, they're like, it's definitely not the greatest movie of all time. And I was like,
I never get that instinct. I just don't, I should say, I don't relate to that instinct of like, almost of feeling like something, when something is so revered that you like, that means you have to like point out its flaws that much more. Or getting quote unquote flaws.
Yeah.
Like what? Like, okay. So,
well, I asked them too. I was like, is this a product of you guys living an entire life of not seeing a thing that people have, that has such renown that you almost automatically want to land on the side of criticism because it's been built up? And it could never meet that expectation. And they said they didn't think that was the case. So, so be it. They did say they thought it was Richard Dreyfuss's best performance that they had seen. I'm like, I might agree with you.
Like, okay, sure. Yeah. It's just not, whenever I finish Jaws, I mean, yeah, he's great in it, but I don't go, wow, Richard Dreyfuss's performance is just what made that movie for me.
Right.
It's like, the whole movie's great. That's
right.
It's
I
one of those
even
movies.
Think of it being Richard Dreyfuss. I'm like, it's Hooper.
I guess it's,
what I mean? Like, that's how good that movie is to me.
Right. It's just a movie where everything's great about it, to then just sit back and say, you know what was great? That editing was just so. It's just, I don't know. It's like, no, the movie was great. I don't know.
No, I know. It's an interesting. I love when you get that, like, out of what feels like an out of left field take on something, where you hear the take and your brain scrambles because you're like, whoa, what? But that's cool. It's all just subjective anyway. Who cares?
Well, on that note, shall we move on to things of note?
Sure.
All right, here we go. Things of note.
This should be interesting.
You already mentioned, which I had a suspicion when I finished the movie. I was like, I have a feeling that this lead character was also the director, even though I should have known that by like looking at the credits in the beginning, but I missed it somehow.
And we should mention his name because I forgot to say the credits up front. José Mojica Marins.
Yeah.
It was written, starred, directed by him, and also written by Waldomiro França and Magda May.
It's always to me a really what's the right word for it? It's a challenge at the least when you are the writer, director, and lead. Like, that is tricky territory. And there were definitely times in the movie where I was like, oh, it's right on the cusp of not working because it's almost just him I don't know how to describe it. Like, how do I describe this? It's not. It's. What's the term for when you're kind of you're doing too much because nobody is there to like rein you in. I don't know. There's a word for this, I feel like, but it was right on the border of that, where I'm like, if this was a different director, you had somebody to kind of, move that performance around a little bit, like just another eyeball on it, I think it may have felt better to me. But
No, man, that's
it's so untethered.
That's what makes it so great is like you have that big long like one take where he's just screaming to the heavens monologue, and he's giving it his all because they just shot it once too.
Yeah,
like so. Here's some fun. I'm guessing you didn't watch there's like a 12-minute interview with him on the DVD.
No.
Okay, well, the way they shot this film, Tim, I think they only had like 15 rolls of film.
Oh no.
And then 2 of them were stolen. So yeah, there was that. When on a typical film at the time that the crew would be used to for a feature film of that length, as he gave as an example, would be 80 rolls of film.
Okay. Yeah.
So that puts it in perspective. And now just I got to talk through, how this film came to be and its journey that he described. First, what though he was stepping into was, it was, as the first horror film in Brazil. But just because of that, it just meant the crew, people, anyone was like, well, you can't make a horror movie in Brazil. Just this arbitrary attitude of, well, it's never been done, so it can't be done. Is this kind of
mean, Jesus, even more than like that, even just that alone makes the movie make more sense.
Right?
Right? Like it's like commentary on that attitude.
So he was set to do something else, make another film when he had a nightmare. That was where he was, he imagined getting dragged into his own grave.
Oh.
And he was in such he was so distraught and screaming from it that his family thought he had been possessed. Like that's how severe his night terror or whatever you want to call it was. But that planted the seed of this film. And that also, there was a visage, a person in that nightmare of essentially the Coffin Joe character of just a character dressed in all black with a top hat like that. So this film came from basically channeling the image of the Undertaker and getting dragged into your own grave. So then from there, he like him and his secretary just wrote up this film, this Coffin Joe character, and came up with this story. And he had his 15 rolls of film, as I said, some of which were stolen. And then onto that, it was just a 12-day shoot inside a 600 square foot studio with only...
I'm sorry, what?
With only 1 day in a real cemetery of exteriors. So this whole film is a set on a 600 square foot studio. So
do you know how small 600 square feet is?
Yeah, so think about it.
Your apartment is probably about 600 square feet.
No, it's actually, this is 100 something, like 150.
No way, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Man.
So think of it. So when the procession is going by, when he's eating his meat by the window, that was just they just built the window for that, and just
so
set it
amazing.
outside people walking by. Like when he's wandering through the forest and everything, they're all just fake trees and whatever.
That's so crazy.
Like anything in the frame is probably all that was there in the shot.
I bet the bar is the biggest set. So that's probably just the room with as little as a little set dressing as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
That's it.
That's crazy.
And it was fun just because he said, everyone on the crew was like, you're crazy. This isn't going to work. Look how silly this is. You just have these 2 branches sticking out you're walking through. It doesn't look real. And then they're so impressed in the end result. It just totally works.
Wow. That is wild.
Yeah. Decides to become blasphemous because he thinks it's all wrong. I don't know what I meant by that note. Here's the here's what I thought of you. You would get a kick out of that ghost effect that you mentioned loving.
Oh yeah.
With the where it's like this border of however you described it.
Sparkles.
It is literal sparkles. He took glitter and glued it on the film reel.
That's about what it seems like.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Amazing. And yeah, as I kind of already said, the film was hugely popular, but it had some people loved it, some hated it. People couldn't decide if it was great or it was awful. It was just all this mixed bag reaction stuff to it, but you just couldn't deny people, as a lot of things that make their mark, you did have your opinion on it one way or the other, and it was always a strong opinion.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then my own little fun thing of note from this interview I was watching, I just had to mention. So, what's his name again? José Marins. He's, Coffin Joe has his long fingernails. Jose does too. So he was like, well, it worked out when I cast myself because I already had long fingernails. And like 30 years later or wherever, when this interview is, he still has them. And when they're these thick, long fingernails he has on all his fingers. So when he's talking and gesticulating, you're just hearing this like clicking like throughout the whole interview.
Oh, no. That's funny.
Just had to mention that.
What a character.
And so, we'll say, Coffin Joe went on to appear in other things, became a famous character. Like I said, he's a Freddy in Brazil. Joe returns in This Night I'll Possess Your Corpse, then again in Embodiment of Evil. He appears as a host in an anthology film, The Strange World of Coffin Joe, appeared in another film called Awakening of the Beast. Goes kind of on and on here.
Wow.
Including being portrayed by another actor or actors. So, he's... here's a picture. It's great. Coffin Joe's float in the 2018 Carnival of Sao Paulo parade. So,
wow. Cool.
There you go. He's a icon, a Brazilian horror icon. And I'm totally going to put the sequel in our future hat, Tim.
Well,
so
you have every right to do that.
We'll see you again for This Night I'll Possess Your Corpse. Coffin Joe. Looking forward to it.
Cool, dude.
Great. All right. Well, if that's it for our bud Joe, do you have any recommendations for this week?
Sure. I've really only been watching one thing, which comes out every Friday. It's it's the only Marvel thing that's happening right now. It's called The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and it's fun. Getting just enough of the like Marvel treat that has been so sorely lacking over the last year. So it's fun. It's good. It's not mind blowing, but it's a good ride.
Great.
The acting is great.
Woo. I still want to.
Surprisingly good scenes.
I do want to watch WandaVision. I haven't seen any of that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I will recommend Dead, what I already recommended to you, Tim, which was Game of Death, available on Shudder.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah. Maybe I'll watch that tonight.
It's so much fun. It's just like one of those Shudder watches. It's a new movie. It's like 70-something minutes where it's so hit or miss, it feels like when you kind of poke through there. But this was certainly a hit in my book. It's just a simple premise, well done. I think I like the Letterboxd review for it that says Harmony Korine's Jumanji. I think that's a great way to explain it. Just some cool, really fun stylistic stuff on a budget. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say what it is because it's just a fun watch.
Yeah, don't.
Check it out.
I'll just watch it.
Great. Game of Death. And Tim, I believe it's my turn to pull from the hat.
I think you're correct. So let me just shuffle around here.
I'll tell you when to stop and... Stop.
We got... Oh, interesting. Can you see that?
Tenebrae, 1982, from our old bud Dario.
Ooh,
Signore
Dario.
Argento is back in the dismembering horror house.
It's like number 4 for us, maybe 3 or 4.
Great. I mean, I'll never know which ones are his films and which ones are Fulci's, so it's that we've watched. It's fine. Giallo. Return to. We looked up the proper pronunciation. Giallo.
That's right.
Giallo. Great.
Giallo.
Well, it's always fun to dip our feet in that pond, the yellow Giallo pond.
Agreed.
Great. All right. Well, I think that's it then. You can find us wherever you found us. Our mixer, our master, we want to shout out and say thanks to is Brendan Welch.
Thanks, Brendan.
I'm Ryan McDuffie.
Oh, yeah. I'm Tim Aslan, if you had forgotten.
Great. And so in closing, whether at midnight will take your soul or not, thank you so much for being here and for listening.
Yes, and we will see you next time.
Goodbye.